Justin Fields maybe eyeing up some other teams. Big Deke news. I thought Justin Fields to the Steelers was a done deal.
Not so fast, not so fast, not so fast.
Yeah. So what's the holdup then? If Fields is the Steelers' first priority, as reported by Danny Rossini, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, Mark Aboli, etc., everything's pointing towards the Steelers wanting Fields back, right? In terms of the two in-house quarterbacks. They're going to try to sign Fields before free agency starts. So if that's the case, and Fields wants to be back. He said he likes it here, values the familiarity, likes the coaching, all that stuff. If Fields wants to be back, Steelers want Fields back, then what's going on then? Well, it actually may not be the Steelers holding this thing up. I could see it being Fields. I really could. Because even though he values the continuity that he would have if he re-signed here to be 2 years in a row with the same coordinator under the same team, he may value some other stuff as well that he's not necessarily willing to give up at the expense of just familiarity. And those few things are a one-year deal, potentially getting more money elsewhere, but then also the clear path to be a starter. And I don't know if the Steelers are necessarily guaranteeing Fields those three things. The thing the Steelers can guarantee him is the familiarity, having the same coordinator, having the same offensive system, for the most part, the same teammates around him. But those other three, I could see those points, there being some tension there. Like, for example, with the whole having a clear path to start thing, I could see the Steelers saying, if they brought back Fields, that you're in the pole position, we'll give you every opportunity to start, but we also still want it to be a legit open competition. Because, hell, if the Steelers did it with Kenny last offseason, a guy that they invested a first-round pick in, a guy that had a winning record as a starter for the team with Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator, the Steelers are probably saying to themselves, like, why wouldn't we do a similar thing with Justin Fields? We didn't spend a first-round pick on him, and we only got a 6-game sample size with him. And even in that 6-game sample size, Fields did well. We made the decision to move off of him. So why, even if we bring Fields back, why wouldn't we have some sort of competition? Even if Fields would have the pole position, he would have the upper hand. Because I really could. Even if we sign Fields, I could still see us drafting a quarterback early. I could still see us maybe drafting Dart in the first, maybe Tyler Shaw in the second, or Milroe in the second, Quinn Ewers in the third. And the Steelers saying, may the best man win. But Fields, you're in the lead. Trust us, bro. Like, you got this. We kind of did the same thing with Mitch and Kenny. I mean, we signed Mitch, free agency. We brought in Kenny. Now, Mitch did get a chance to start day one. He started the first 3 weeks of the season, but it wasn't too long before we saw Kenny in his rookie season. So I wouldn't blame Fields for not trusting the situation fully without some sort of guarantee. But I also don't blame the Steelers either for bringing in another guy to compete and hold their leverage on the situation, not just give everything to Fields. Because I think it's likely what's going on right now is that the Steelers would say, we promise you'll be the day one starter. We may or may not draft a guy, but we're going to give you every chance to win this thing out and prove that you're the guy for 17 games. But I like I said, I could see Fields just, being a little hesitant on it. But is Fields in the position to be hesitant on something like that? Are there teams out there that could give Fields a guarantee? Would the Giants, the Jets, the Raiders, would they say, we'll give you 17 games? Don't worry about us drafting a guy. We're not going to do that. And that's more appealing to Fields. And I wouldn't blame Fields for feeling that way. I also don't blame the Steelers for maybe wanting to bring in some competition. I also think there's something to be said for having a vision and believing in a guy and projecting out in the future. And giving a guy a vote of confidence. Because if I'm making the decision, I feel like I go that route with Fields. Because one could argue that we should have done the same thing with Kenny. Kenny is a dude you believed in enough to draft in the first round. He did have a winning record with you. Now, he did have some issues with consistency and staying healthy, but he was only 2 years in and really only played at that point, I think it was like 20 games as a starter, so like a season and a half. Going into a year 3, like I think there's something to be said for like, you know what, we're gonna stick with you. We're not gonna bring in like, now again, I think there is something to be said for competition, but you know, we're not gonna bring in a Russ, man. We're not gonna ruffle feathers. This is your team, and the Steelers have an opportunity to do that with Fields too. But I get the competition aspect of it too, man. Like everyone, you should always be competing. But to give a guy a vote of confidence, to say that, you know, we believe in you, you have an opportunity to make mistakes, we're going to give you a large sample size, we're going to give you 17 games. There's also something to be said for that too. And I feel like the Steelers are in that type of position where we got to stop like playing it safe. We got to stop like keeping options open and like, okay, we'll bring back Fields, but what about this other guy? Let's look at this other guy as opposed to just going all in on Fields, using some of these early draft picks to get another receiver to surround Fields with, get some extra guys on defense. I feel like we're at the spot we got to shoot for ceiling, and like drafting another quarterback early after signing Fields, who Fields has, as I mentioned, you compare him to this draft class, has just as much talent, if not more talent, than everyone in this class. So, like, what exactly are you looking for from a ceiling standpoint in this draft class that Fields doesn't have? So why not just go with the guy that you're familiar with, that you have some time with, a guy that has shown you he can go 4-2 and have a floor and be a legitimate starter for your team. Did it for 6 games. Now we got to see it for 17, and that's why I just keep like, what are we so scared of with the whole Fields thing and just turning the keys over and saying like, let's see what happens, man. Let's see if we could run a Eagle-style offense with Fields and let him loose. What are we so scared of here? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. If it works out, great. Then you feel like you can actually compete with these teams. But how we're operating and we're doing the whole Russ approach and trying to play it safe and trying to keep options open and trying to keep leverage on the situation, we see where it's getting us, 9-8, 10-7. And I'd argue if we just bring back Fields, and even if we do give him the keys and try to go all in, we're probably going to go that record anyway, because the history of Mike Tomlin being our head coach, yeah, we go at least 8-8 or we don't have a losing record. So, like, what are we scared of? Shoot for the ceiling. And with this whole, like, 1-year deal thing with Fields and the money, I think the money speaks for itself. If he's getting significantly more money elsewhere, yeah, I don't blame him for valuing that. But the whole length of the contract, the Steelers are looking reportedly for like a 2-year deal. Fields wants a 1-year deal. With Fields, the explanation is, or the reasoning is, he probably doesn't want to be held to a lower deal for 2026 if he balls out in 2025 and increases his market value, almost like Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, 1-year deal for $10 million with the Vikings last offseason. Has a hell of a season outside of the last 2 games, increased his market value. And he was either going to get franchise tagged by the Vikings, which was going to get him $40 million, or now he's on the open market and is probably looking at like a $25-30 million deal per year. And if it wasn't for those last 2 games, he'd be getting probably between $40 or $50 million. So Fields is looking like that, looking at that and saying like, okay, if I can have a Sam Darnold type of year, maybe 30 total touchdowns, Steelers winning record, we win a playoff game, I could be looking at $40-50 million next offseason. But if I sign a 2-year deal with the Steelers, I'm going to kind of be capped, you know, like to whatever deal that I sign this offseason. If it's a 2-year deal around, you know, $15 million per, then I got to live with that. Now, you could play hardball, hold out, do all that type of stuff, but I could see why Fields would want to keep his options open. Because even if it doesn't exactly work out with Fields here next year, he's still going to have a job in the NFL. It's not going to be like that much of a drop-off from what his contract is. He's going to sign this offseason most likely, because backups still get paid decent money, between like $5 or $10 million bucks, like being a high-end backup. Watch like Danny Dimes' contract this offseason. Danny Dimes, I don't think any team signing up for him to be the starter. Maybe he'll like compete, but most likely he's going to be a backup. He might get around $10 million or something. Sam Darnold, we saw what he got with the Vikings. Like they didn't believe in him fully. He was going to be competing with J.J. McCarthy. $10 million. Like Fields, even if it doesn't work out with the Steelers, I could still see him getting like, a $6-7 million deal somewhere, even if, he's not supposed to be the starter for a team, but he'll be more of a high-end backup. So, like, the difference between what your potential earnings are versus what the floor is on a 1-year deal to 2-year deal, I could see why Fields wants to keep his options open here, like the whole risk versus reward aspect of this. But, yeah, these are all the factors in play. What does Fields value most? What did the Steelers value most in all this? And I guess that's why we don't have something completely done right now. This is probably some of the back and forth. But, yeah, Fields hits the open market on Monday. Who knows? Who knows? Steelers will probably, most likely, I'm not calling for this. I don't want this to happen. But Steelers would pivot back to Russ. Like, I think Russ is the guy that they have in their back pocket in case things don't work out with Fields and Fields wants more money. He thinks another opportunity is better for him, goes to the Jets, Raiders, whoever it is. Steelers will just fall back on Russ, which would be unfortunate. I think they should pivot to Rodgers, but that's that. We'll wait and see, man. We'll wait and see. I thought a deal was going to get done soon here. I thought a deal was going to get done by the end of the week, but I guess we still technically have the weekend, right? Thursday, though, we're closing in. Hope you guys enjoyed this edition of Big Deke News. Stay chilling. Peace.